Stan Ventures does backlinks. So I talk to so many agencies that have a very different definition of what a quality backlink is. How do you define a good quality backlink in today's SEO world?
One thing I will say, and this is going to be maybe a hot take, maybe not, I don't know. I don't focus on authorities or domain rating score, either of those. That's the first thing. Like, I throw those out the window. Those are estimations. There's a relevance around the content and the anchor text in which your link is surrounded that passes value, because it's telling a bot, this is what this page is about, and is coming from a page with high traffic sources around the topic. I think topicality and understanding how well that page does within as an authority for that individual topic or idea, and then what is the relevant anchor text pointing back to you. Doesn't matter whether it's follow or no follow. I found that sites that just have a bunch of content actually water down their own authority because they're not niche specific, or they don't have authority or relevance or expertise in a particular area.
Welcome to SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Koa Kauwe. This is brought to you by Stan Ventures. Today's guest is joining us from a perspective of doing SEO on hard mode, in higher education specifically, where 100-year-old domains, extremely long sales cycles, single conversions worth upwards of $40,000 to $50,000, and clients that make decisions by committee, often not just by themselves, whether it's including parents and everything else that could go onto it. Every problem that agencies deal with exists in this world. It's just a little heavier than most. Welcome, Ray Martinez, to the SEO On-Air podcast.
Thank you, Koa, for having me on. I'm excited to be on today.
This is a fun one for me. I can say that you're the first guest that we've really taken on that can express their SEO expertise in the EDU area. So excited to dive into that with you. I know you've done a few podcasts as well. And what I did today was try to put the podcast in hard mode for you as well, and ask you questions that I don't think you've already answered, or make you go a little deeper on questions that I've seen you on other podcasts. So are you ready for a little bit of the grill down from SEO On-Air?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm kind of nervous.
Flinch, you got to look at This is going to be a real catch-all, and it's recorded. So if it goes terribly, I guess we just don't post it. So everyone listening, you know that you made it through the test.
Oh, yeah.
So 15 years in the industry. Let's just start with a quick intro. What is so unique about EDU, or the education SEO world, that's different than what most people see in their experience of SEO?
I think other SEOs tend to think, hey, like EDU, it's easy. You got a brand. You can just rely on brand and students are going to enroll themselves. But really, it's a regulated space. It's a space where politics, funding, all sorts of other areas outside of marketing control are affecting the way our prospective students interact with universities. And what I mean by that is if a provost or a dean decides, hey, this program's not going to happen anymore, that program's cut, and you lose a base of prospective students interested in your institution. If the Department of Education says, hey, we're not going to fund this program, and you only have a cap on how much you can take out from a financial aid perspective, that's going to hurt the interest in your program, right? So we have all these outside influences, plus we have faculty members, and a lot of universities operate as a bureaucratic entity with lots of different departments that often are siloed in the way they work. And so it makes us managing not only just the marketing, working across our internal stakeholders and getting buy-in, that much more important. And so it's I'd say it's most comparable to like enterprise level, where you have each department handling everything on its own, and you have to get that buy-in across multiple stakeholders. So it really is a challenge, and it is different. And then on top of that, right, it's not just like one subset of keywords. Because when we think about individual programs, you can go into all sorts of verticals and areas, and we can cover all sorts of topics. And so there's a broad range and expertise around the different types of degrees, different levels, different modalities, and then meeting those different types of students who want each of those degrees where they are. So that means a lot of varied content and a lot of outreach in places that we know are driving our prospective students. And so it means more than just SEO. It means us being disciplined across multiple channels.
I think I appreciate that your industry, if you talk about the different verticals that someone might want to go into for a degree, the funnel feels pretty clear. It doesn't necessarily mean I knows where to start the funnel, though. I think that's where I find myself drawn to that conversation. You've got a biology program, you've got a chemistry program, you've got a math program, everything else. It feels like the content funnel makes sense. But where do you actually point it to drive business to a university? How long is that sales process, and where does your company see it starting?
Yeah, I mean, for us, when we think about a prospective student coming in, learning about a program, becoming a lead, and actually submitting an application and being enrolled as a student, and that's that process that we see, right? So like you hit our marketing, become a lead, submit your application, you get accepted, and then you become enrolled. That's a 12 to 18 month process. And when we think about our most valuable asset in higher ed, see I want to say this is where it's multidisciplinary, right? Like if you were to think of e-commerce, your product detail page and the category pages above that are your most valuable asset. It's the same thing for higher ed, right? So when we think about higher ed, our program page is our product detail page. That is the information that's directly related to our program. It's going to talk about our learning outcomes. It's going to talk about the curriculum. If we have a really good program page, we may be talking about the people who are teaching you. We're going to give you all the necessary bytes of information for our prospective student to interact and learn as much as they can. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Koa.
No, I want to dive a little deeper into that prospective student, actually, because I think that's fascinating to me, that you have to determine who your ICP is. And each university, each program might have a different variation of what they believe that to be. What do you typically see? Like, what are the standard filters that you would say from an average university that they're using to determine who should be their target customer?
Yeah, I think part of that is what's the modality of the program, right? So like if we see a traditional undergrad on campus, I'm Dorman and I'm going to go to that school, of course that's going to be a high school student, right? And they're going to be further out from career-oriented content information. They're going to be really focused and driven by brand and brand affinity. They're going to be focused on campus life and student life activities. And that's really what's going to shape them on the traditional side. But where we work with online programs. And online programs, for us, focus on the adult online learner. And so that could be somebody who's either starting school for the very first time, has worked a job, and they have a full-time job, and they're going to school, and they're doing this asynchronously. That could be somebody who's going back to school, who's earned credits already, and they're like, hey, I really want to focus on something new and finish my degree. That could be someone who, they want to switch careers. And then that breaks down between our levels, right? So bachelor's degree and then our master's degree level, where we have different levels of experience career-wise and folks looking to get different things out of them. And that really goes back to us thinking about the career outcomes and the skills outcomes that these prospective students in their own right want. And so we map that funnel and we map that persona back to, hey, if we know that, University of Tulsa has a cybersecurity program, where are they often seeing their students get placed? And let's find an audience who wants that placement, right? I think so. It's us matching and looking at, hey, where's the existing network? How can we expand that? And then also, what is our curriculum teaching our prospective students? What's it going to teach our current students, and how are they going to take that and be able to shape their outcomes? And the biggest thing is, across all of our different personas, they're looking for ROI. They're looking for a return on investment, and they're looking to say, hey, is this program going to lead me to either the outcome I want or down a path that's favorable and allows me to be successful in the future?
I'm glad you brought up ROI. My mind started drifting into this. Education has been under a little bit of heat since the release of AI. I think I saw something about Chegg being one of the first major education deaths of the AI era. I want to know from like the search side of things, across the board, every marketing company I've talked to has seen a decline in typically organic search, not necessarily revenue. I imagine it's probably similar with what you're seeing. Can you talk to me a little bit about how AI has changed the search volume in higher ed?
Yeah, I certainly can. I spoke about this a bit at SEO Week, and I had some data to really highlight that. From a traffic standpoint, pure organic traffic, at a minimum, you'll see a drop of at least 25% year over year with no ranking change. And we know that click-through is affected by AI overviews, AI mode. Our prospective students, we know, are also using things like ChatGPT. They're using Claude. They're using Perplexity, Copilot if they're in Microsoft Teams suites. Right? They're using all these additional tools to pull in information. When we think about the conversion side, we're actually seeing a rise in lead volume and a rise in application volume, and we're seeing better quality conversion, and we measure that through a lead to application rate. So how many leads are submitting applications, and what's that rate done over time? And so part of the data that I presented at SEO Week showed, hey, like we went from like low 40% lead to application rate to about 56% in 2026. We've seen volume steadily increase across programs that not only just operated in SEO, but they were also doing other forms of organic market like digital PR. And when I mean digital PR, I mean digital PR in a more media relations, media pitching sense, and organic social too. And so when we were able to combine those with a robust SEO effort, we're able to spread the brand out and have that messaging, and we're being surfaced in answers. We know that there are multiple studies that have shown. So UPSIA's study is one, and shout out to Will Scott. He put together a study with UPSIA. So UPSIA is partner organizations for higher education. They help institutions not only plan online marketing and enrollment and admissions tools, but they also talk about curriculum. And they're a conference that's really uses tools for universities to help themselves upskill and meet the challenge and changing demands. They put together this study that looked at AI search and said, hey, sub 60% of our students are using AI search in picking a program. And when our partners are appearing in it, over 50% of them are believing and trusting our partners appearing in that search result. So us visually being there matters. And then at the same time, we're seeing a correlation with a rise in organic quality. So we see a decline in traffic, and most of the traffic that I see us losing is top of funnel blog content that was definition style, trend style, high level non-commodity content that we know that a lot of these tools just simply won't cite a source they're using their internal training data on. So that's the biggest change I've seen, but from our standpoint, it just means that we have to operate in a much more old school marketing lens. Like, what is the passive impression? What is the internet billboard? How do we earn that space? And how do we make sure that we're positioning ourselves in the right way?
Okay, I'm going to take it back a bit to like just the SEO fulfillment side for EDU. And I want to take it back to something you said. Hopefully you remember this, but most people listening have never touched an EDU domain. Take us inside, because you mentioned something wild, that there's a bit of a black market around university websites. Do you remember sharing that?
Oh yeah, I do.
Talk to me about that. What does that mean?
Nick Leroy was actually teasing me the other day about this. A while back, you could see it in SERPs if you look for like best CBD gummies or some sort of spammy term, and you'll see this on like spam products. You'll see .edu results. And really what's happening is either a student who has access to publishing their own school site within a multi-site instance is selling links, which I think is unlikely for the most part, or someone has phished student credentials or faculty credentials, and it gives them access to a .edu network. Because like a lot of these .edu sites, they allow their students to publish content, and so when you do that, you end up living off of a .edu subdomain, and you're getting all the inherited authority from this .edu, and so folks are using that exploit to post content to spammy products, and they use like a JavaScript redirect, and they send them down a pipeline, and I think Google's done a really good job on cracking down on this as of late, probably over the last year, but really they've been, folks have been found a way to exploit, the hesitancy to penalize a .edu and use it to its advantage. And also, like, when we think about these schools and their tech stacks, Oftentimes schools that operate like in a subdomain structure are operating hundreds of subdomains. So they don't just have one out there, they have like 800. So like if I'm in central IT and I have to manage a subdomain or a list of subdomains, and then I'm not talking to administrators who are requesting new subdomains and teachers who are spinning up new subdomains or subfolders for their respective programs, it creates a network of us not knowing what's going on, and it leads to a proliferation in.
How do you find it at that point? What are the signals that you find that show that you're maybe being leached on?
You can see it in Search Console. Really quickly, like if you have domain level access in Search Console and you look at your queries, you can filter for spam queries. You can see
they show up pretty blatantly in there, I guess, huh?
Yep, and then also you could do a site search. A lot of times a crawl is not going to reveal it because it's deep linked, and so you'd have to know which subdomain, or if you crawl all the subdomains, it's going to be a massive crawl, which is going to be really hard to parse. So my best bet is always look in Search Console. Look for queries along the gambling lines. Look for queries along the CBD gummies of the world,
and the groups that are willing to play the game a little more dangerously, huh?
Yep, exactly. And large spikes, like anomalous spikes to your site, also give away the game a bit, right? Like looking for places outside, like where you're not doing marketing, and you see like a large spike, that'll also tell you.
So cutting those off seems like it could be important just for the spammy aspect of what's being built around you. Google has done a pretty good job of trying to ignore really crappy links that are maybe being used as like a aggressive attack from one company to another to throw like poor links at it to see if they can get their website de-indexed. Is your situation in EDU any different than that type of situation? I understand that it's tied to the subdomain. That's definitely a unique way to get it. But is it because the trust that Google puts into EDU websites? Is that what makes it so different in your industry?
Yeah, because you have to be chartered to get a .edu, right? Like you have to have a school charter. There are certain requests. You can't just go out and buy a .edu domain, right? Like so there's paperwork there. You have to prove that you're an actual school. And I've seen some people make the claim saying, hey, I could get that. And it's like, well, good luck. And then also, right, I think it wades into the area of regulation, right? I think Google doesn't want to touch regulation. They don't want to kick a bee's nest where they don't have to. And they are really good at ignoring links.
That was going to be my next question here. Do you feel the need to actually disavow links today, or do you feel like Google is doing a good enough job? What's the nuance?
I think with .edu I don't disavow any links. I think for my personal site, hell yeah, I'll get that manual action real quick.
That's a pretty big sign for those listening.
Yeah. I've had a personal consulting site attacked with like adult entertainment links before. And I literally just like flatlined to zero and disavowed them. Google cleaned it up really quickly, and Search Console cleaned up within 3 weeks, and we were back in business before I could receive a manual action. But Google already saw the signs of spam pointing towards it, so they were going to demote content. I get those things cleaned up because I do have my thoughts around certain spam links hurt more than others. I think there's a propensity to see like buy SEO backlinks, anchor text links. Those are across almost every site on the web, and
they just start showing up like crazy. You can't stop those ones.
And exactly, and there's a certain level of, I think, a spam threshold that I want to say. If you have good, healthy, relevant links pointing, those will outweigh any spam links. And then we're simply seeing those not pass through to Google. I've seen people on Fiverr sell Google backlinks where they have like redirect pages that Google has that they somehow inject your link on there. And
so Fiverr is the black market of backlinks, then, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I've done some testing on stuff like to see what sticks and see how they build up authority, and then it's crazy. You just drop in like 10,000 links, and they'll they'll get it crawled and indexed relatively quickly because they'll post it on a .xyz domain, point a bunch of links to that domain so it gets crawled quickly. But those don't last. You'll
And
see your
someone asked me
authority.
once in a sales pitch, like, well, how much would you charge me for 10,000 backlinks? I was like, I'm not going to sell you 10,000 backlinks. Like, we're thinking about a different strategy for most businesses that are going about it at scale, trying to play the game. When you say black market, there's black hat would be more of what you typically call that fake push for a
Yep.
lot of volume.
I've,
But
I've
then
also
there
seen.
becomes a, go ahead.
Yeah, I've also seen like the VPN piece, right? Like where I've literally seen this in the higher ed space where an online program management company, this was years ago, hired someone and said, "Here's $2 million, build me backlinks," and they put no requirements around what a backlink was, and this vendor just built out and spun off a bunch of VPNs and PBNs,
PBNs,
private, yeah. And
I was curious with VPN, yeah. PBNs.
I meant to say PBN. Apologies. And literally just the worst low quality backlinks, and they fulfilled about $2 million worth of those. Yeah.
Yeah, yikes. So then this is something that I feel passionately about because Stan Ventures does backlinks. So I talk to so many agencies that have a very different definition of what a quality backlink is. I've seen things that were essentially like very niche citations that they were paying a good chunk of money for. I've seen zero traffic. I've seen not indexed at all. The full mix of like everything in the quality of backlinks. Often just coming from their experience in SEO and what they learned was a good backlink from their education. And maybe lacking the experience of what is a quality backlink today, which always seems to be evolving, right? So Ray, from your experience, I'm trying to sum it down here. How do you define a good quality backlink in today's SEO world?
Yeah. One thing I will say, and this is going to be maybe a hot take, maybe not, I don't know. I don't focus on authority or domain rating score, either of those. That's the first thing. Like I throw those out the window. Those are estimations.
Let's dive into that though, because that's a big deal. Not everyone understands that that's not as big a signal as they used to think it was. Why wouldn't you trust that?
Because where's the relevancy, right? Like, if I could get a bunch of 90 plus profile link domain, like profile links from really high rated domains, right? Like those don't mean anything to me, right? Like that's not real authority. That's not real page rank being passed to me. There's a relevance around the content and the anchor text in which your link is surrounded that passes value, because it's telling a bot this is what this page is about, and it's coming from a page with high traffic sources around the topic, right? So I think topicality and understanding how well that page does as an authority for that individual topic or idea, and then what is the relevant anchor text pointing back to you, doesn't matter whether it's follow or no follow. I found that the relevancy aspect, and I always like to say, can that actually drive real referral traffic? And that's like a good benchmark, and you're not always going to get referral traffic, but can it is the question.
I like how we got here talking about the disavow aspect of backlinks on your own site, and now transitioning into the relevancy of what you're trying to do, maybe in referring business back to your site. How do you see those two? Talk to me about the similarities between how Google might be ignoring backlinks on your own site and potentially ignoring backlinks that are coming to your site.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to look at like, hey, are you a site that is actually has authority in a one particular space or arena? Do you have actual expertise there? It goes back to the EAT signals, right? Like they evaluate the quality of your content. And then that's going to determine, right? Like, am I an authoritative figure in this space? And what's the value and the weight of a link being pointed back, right? And then I found that sites that just have a bunch of content actually water down their own authority because they're not niche specific, or they're not, they don't have authority or relevance or expertise in a particular area. They're just talking about a lot of things. That's not value, right? Like that. And
complexity in today's SEO world where AI has enabled everybody to talk so much.
And exactly. And I think, let's go back a couple years ago. We saw this happen with Forbes. Forbes Advisor was, they were humming along. They did a lot of great content. I know the former SEOs of Forbes Advisor, and they're great people, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. And Google penalized that subfolder to hell. They said, all right.
I wasn't aware of the Forbes situation, so I have to ask: is this similar to what we saw from HubSpot?
Similar to what we saw from HubSpot. I want to say Forbes received a full manual action though, okay. and they have not recovered. They've seen some recovery, but they just haven't fully recovered to the previous traffic levels, and they had to take down a bunch of content.
I'm going to pivot us a little bit here. Actually, I want to take it back to the EDU side of things for you. You have worked with some really large universities, and there's also a lot of small universities. And this is personal for everyone that's working on SEO, because there's a lot of major players in the industry, and then there's those that are trying to get their share of the pie underneath, trying to be, I don't know, very fluid or find where their niche is and lock it down. So talk to me about what's different with you working with like universities. How does what works for a large university differ from what works for a small university?
There's a difference in difficulty in terms of like what I have to surface, right? So a larger university with a well-known brand, their unique value is going to be behind their alumni network. It's going to be behind the connections that everyone knows they have. So if they have relationships with a business, if they're also pulling in traffic and their brand is being featured on, let's say they're a D1 team, right? And they're featured on Sports Center week in, week out. We could actually see that traffic, and we see the large spikes. And, I worked with an SEC school the year they won a national title in football. And I watched game day spikes happen, a couple 100,000 clicks, couple million impressions happen every Saturday.
To show up to LSU, or sorry, whoever. I assume it was one of those that you've worked with in the past.
It was LSU, and you could see that right in their traffic. They can earn lots of citations. You look at somebody like a Stanford, right? Like they're an R1 institution, so a top research institute in the country. Their research is actively cited by other institutions, which means they earn lots of links naturally. Links around expertise, right? So that means that their brand is surfaced. We're able to use that, direct that, and then take the actual unique value on their individual programs and really work with our faculty members to highlight them and showcase them. And that's a bit easier because we have mature brands. I think with smaller institutions, we need to be much more active, right? I think smaller institutions, they need the academic thought leadership piece, which is like digital PR. They need that, not just from let's earn high authority brand mentions. It's no, let's actually place and frame the brand so that we're providing outputs outside of just our own website that talk about the unique value we offer our students. Let's talk about some of the hidden gems and make them not so hidden so that folks can actually engage and understand who's teaching them, what are they learning, what's the benefit and the ROI around this smaller institution, and then also right, like
I love the sales side of that. There's literally different values to different sized universities, and whatever you're looking for, you can find based on doing the SEO right and doing marketing.
Of course, and I think part of it's like also a regional play, right? Like if you're not able to pick up and move for a grad program, or you can't afford a top level $250,000 executive MBA, but this school down the street, which has a really great local network, which is something you already operated and you can expand, and they offer an online MBA for a fraction of the cost. That's a great value for you as a prospective student, right? So it's like looking at ways we could highlight value, looking at ways that we can extract expertise, and then we do a lot of the same sorts of pieces, right? Like we might not do as much link building for a top tier institution, right? We may just do content and we'll do very specific.
When that momentum's natural, you don't need to be spending on trying to build it out by yourself. You're just relying on the articles that they produce.
Exactly, and we can get much more nuance there around these top institutions, and that's where we'll focus our efforts. But with a smaller school, it becomes how do we focus on improving the brand? And then also bring that back to a programmatic level, and how do we cover the spread? And what I find are the top institutions have a more robust knowledge graph, right? So they have more pieces of content, they have more areas to be identified in the conversation, And then the smaller brands, it's us fleshing out that knowledge graph and making sure that we're building it from scratch and saying, let's make more of these connections and relationships amongst these different entity types.
I've had the experience of working just from the edges of a small university. And I think that the real superpower of what you do is not necessarily in the strategy, which I'm not insulting you at all here, but it's in the implementation. It seems like working through all the different groups, governances, committees, and everything else would be one of the biggest hurdles to working in SEO in the EDU space. So tell me a little bit about the superpower of navigating the implementation side of SEO and not just the strategy of SEO when you're working.
Oh yeah, I think that's where there's a nuance to working with not only just administrators but faculty. I think, historically, when we think about higher ed, a lot of institutions have a pretty big division between their administrators, the folks who run the business side of the institution, and then their faculty. And, the faculty side of it can often, if they don't believe in the vision of the administration, can often serve
my mind in it right away, yeah.
Right? Like they can stop a project right in its tracks. So it's really working with faculty to turn them into brand champions. Also, letting faculty know that their value is beyond just how they teach. They are brand champions. They are an active part, an important part of the brand and pushing it forward because they're the folks shaping young minds. So us highlighting that any chance we get and building that sort of buy-in for faculty works. Also, us working closely across different teams. And so like as an agency, I always tell folks, right? Like I've worked with partners who've had multiple SEO vendors. I never say, oh, if like this team's doing this, that's their responsibility. I say, hey, let's all get together in a room. Let's chat this through. Let's make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. And also, right, like look at me as an extension of that hand, right? My team is an extension of that hand. We want to be folks who are adding complementary work and not just duplicating efforts so that we're spreading across as many search results, as many AI results as possible so that we're expanding visibility together. And so I think, when we approach it from that way, and then, beyond just like an SEO team standpoint, like I have partnership managers who, this is what they do. They build that relationship and they're really great at doing that. Also, depending on the type of institution, at Archer we have admissions teams and they may be working and be with a particular institution. And so that's an extension. So we're able to really drive buy-in and build a deeper understanding of an institution and say, hey, we understand you and we got you, and build that trust from the ground up. And so when we're able to build that trust across administration, across faculty, what we find is, it makes that execution piece so much easier. Even on the tech SEO side, outside of content, when I think about tech SEO, I work with IT teams, I work with central marketing teams, and I said, let's hop on a call. I'm going to give you a tech audit that's not going to be a checklist of things that you suck at. It's going to say, hey, here are the top 5 things that we need fixed. What do your sprints look like? And how can we fit this into a story within your sprint? And so it's meeting people where they are is always going to win, is always going to build buy-in and build that connection and trust.
So some of these brands have existed for far longer than Google has, right? Like there's a lifespan of some of these universities that makes them well established. The brand, I'm curious, and this is from my lack of experience, doesn't seem like it would have pivoted all that much from its original, values. Like it feels like they're probably pretty stagnant to a certain extent. I'm actually wondering from the SEO side of things, are you often just fulfilling the vision for like a very minor change, but there's a lot of like
I feel like
trying to go ahead and finish my question. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think
you know where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think right, like from a legacy institution standpoint, right, we have this idea and picture of what a brand is, but I think it's constantly shaping, changing, and being involved based off of administrative and faculty changes and who represents the actual voice within the institution. And so we see that happen. Like I have a creative team, they work and help build brands. And I think, it can be down to a school level, down to a department level saying, hey, this is what the larger university brand is, but this is what our sub brand is and how we view ourselves.
Is
And
it,
so
do you find it cyclical? Like, did they just kind of go on a cycle of what they think the brand should be just based on what they might have not been prioritizing in the past?
I see it as more of what's developing and evolving through an industry over time, right? So
Okay.
how are the careers moving? How is the curriculum? How is what's being taught changing? And let's evolve that and pull that into our brand, right? Like um, Tulane School of Social Work, trauma informed care. They were some of the first folks really implementing that and working across, social schools of social work, and building that as a part of their brand and saying, hey, we have online programs, but we're modality agnostic as a part of our brand. Is a great example, right? So they have a vision and a direct identity, and then that may differ from how the business school views themselves, right? And it's significant changes. Its brand themes are the same, but their audiences are different. Their messaging, their brand expression is totally different, and so that's really where we see that sort of distinction. Is like, hey, who is the stakeholder we're operating with, and how big of a piece do they have in this vision, and how much leeway? Because some universities say, hey, go run with it. Some say, hey, we have a central marketing team and they control the brand and the brand expression, so you have to go through them. So it really just depends on how that is distributed. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
there's
there's a lot of
experience
variance.
that Archer has that you guys have probably seen a lot of different, you see a lot of patterns to what people want to rank for versus what they should rank for. And like any marketing agency, that experience is what makes you valuable. Do you feel like your team has to pivot the opinions of the companies you're working with often to lead them towards the path that you've already like determined is more successful? Or do you, I guess, how much do you actually take into account let me back this question up. When a customer signs up or when a client signs up with a marketing agency, they have their vision of what they should do. And a marketing agency has the experience to tell sometimes that that vision is not ideal for their ROI or the best results. I want to know about the Archer experience there. How often do you feel like your account managers or whoever's leading the strategy has to pivot the university's perspective of what they should do back to what your company's experience tells them that they should do?
I wouldn't say pivot. I'd say we have to educate, and so we go back from like a education mindset. That's always a first step for us, right? Like we're always like,
Seems great. Yeah.
yeah, like we have to because we're working with some of the most brilliant minds in academia, and like they are
Pivot
the
would be the
smartest.
wrong word to use, you might say.
Well, no, I'd say it's less of a pivot and more of us saying, here's our vision, here's why this matters. Also taking their input and allowing us to see where their thoughts are, and then showing the gaps, right? Like I've had institutions that say, hey, I want to be Stanford and I want to be an R1 institute. And I say, well, here's all their researchers. How many researchers do you have on your staff who are publishing often, and where is it getting published? And let's build a citation. What would it take to get there? And we could work together to build that out. But I think part of that's like educating and showing the gap, right? Like every school has the aspirational competitor that they want to be like. And then, I also bring back, well, here's who you're really competing with against on the SERPs, right? And so we need to have a mix of who we're competing against now, who we are, and then who we want to be next, as a way to drive strategy. So it's always a little bit of give and take there. But it always boils back down to, did my team and myself do a good job in educating our partners on our organic strategy and approach to make sure that they understand and have buy-in to what we're doing and trying to achieve on their behalf?
I wanted to take that from the strategy to the AI side of things, that the experience for a student or a prospective student is very much involved in the research phase of things. But you've already spoken to those numbers a bit. You've seen overall search volume decline, but the research is happening because there's still the same amount of results coming for these industries. So now I want to know, has anything really changed for the universities as the market feels to have been influenced by the release of AI for higher education, for education in general? Do you feel like searches are changing? Do you see a
Oh, yeah.
way that search terms and maybe Search Console have transitioned from research based to worth based?
I will say the search outputs have changed significantly. We know AI overviews stacks information. You click on it, takes you to AI mode, right? But it's like it's condensed the funnel, right? So like what I mean by that is like we used to think of like a familiarity type of piece, like which is for us is a step below awareness. Thinking about how like compare this computer science degree versus a software engineering degree, right? That query may be included with a master's in computer science query, with a how much does a computer scientist make query, and that's all condensed into one output, right? So search is becoming compressed in that way.
I imagine like even the average income of a computer science degree comparing a couple of universities and trying to pull any data they can out of the success of programs.
100%. And then the disparity, right? Like, so if I'm a smaller institution and I do really good on a placement standpoint, but I don't have content around that, I don't have any press releases around my partners that I'm placing my students with, I don't have any information for my prospective student, and I'm up against an 8-year-old Reddit, which is inaccurate, that 8-year-old Reddit is going to absolutely obliterate the way that my brand is positioned in AI search, as opposed to this larger institution, which they have multiple published authors who are talking about their field of expertise, where they're seeing, hey, here was our annual trip where we took the our junior students out to Paris and they did internships for XYZ fashion house. And then like, so thinking about it from that standpoint where you get that visibility and you're able to really see real world ROI, and now AI summing that up and saying, well, this school seems better because I see more information on this, that disparity grows. So it becomes incumbent upon these smaller brands to really spread the good word around who they are, the value that they bring students, and making sure that it's represented across not just their site, but third-party sites and forums and organic social as well.
AI has changed visibility for a lot of companies, and I assume it's very similar for you. How do you tie the results of your AI results, your search results, to actual, if it's called revenue for that university, or if it's student headcount, whatever they determine to be the metric of success? How are you able to track results?
Yeah, I stack lead and application volume against brand visibility, like so AI citations, AI impressions, and then I look at the correlation. Are we seeing those things go up together, right? So a great indicator of like folks are actually self-qualifying there and saying, and I'm lucky where I actually have access to a sales team and an admissions team that can give me feedback and say, hey, here's what we're seeing from a quality standpoint. And then overall, when we think about it coupled with our paid actions, we're looking at an overall cost per enrollment. So we're like, is that cost per enrollment, is it costing us more to earn one student, or is it costing us less? And so that's how we're measuring this back. It's a bit of GA4, a bit of some of these external AI visibility tools, which, to quote Mike King, it's not about accuracy, it's about precision, right? So we need a directional place so that we're seeing, can we measure not only just the citations, but like citations at a ratio, saying, are we seeing it go up or go down?
I think the share of voice is becoming such a popular,
that share of voice, and then also, right, like, are we shaping brand sentiment? And so having a grasp of those two things and stacking them across metrics and creating visualizations around like what do leads look like and what do applications look like in that time frame is a helpful way to prove and show value.
Okay, my last question for you. Where do you get the most reward out of your career in education SEO?
I pivoted to higher ed now 10 years ago. And part of it was about bringing access to education. I come from New York City. I have a lot of friends who didn't go to school, who did not enter into academia, who don't have degrees, who didn't have the same opportunities. So I take pride in that. And for me, like I've worked with a state system recently where they built out online programs, and Archer, we were the exclusive partner, and we helped drive in a 3-year span 4,000 enrollments. That's 4,000 people's lives we've changed.
Yeah, the positive side of your SEO is that you get to help people pursue a life that's better than what they're living right now. Whereas
100%. And we get that feedback not directly to us as the marketer. We get that through our admissions teams, who somebody writes a note and says, hey, Chris, you changed my life because you helped me enroll in this program, and now I am a Master of Science in nursing, and I saw my salary go up, and I could buy a home, and now I'm not housing unstable. And while I was in school, I was living out my car, so my life is completely changed. We've received notes like that.
That's awesome.
And so, that's fulfilling, and it's just a mission for us, right? I think being a part of higher ed means us opening doors and making sure that people have access to education and can do what they want to do.
Okay. I actually have 3 rapid fire questions for you to wrap this up. First one is, what is one tool that has earned its subscription for you this year?
I would say Peak AI. Shout out to Peak. They've done a really good job of having a Claude MCP hookup where we're able to look at AI visibility and pull that into some of our Claude reports. I want to say I've been having a good time with SEMrush's API, their new AI API, and pulling in information. And then the third one, it's a free one, it's a goodie one, and it's from Google, surprisingly. But looking at like Google's entity API / natural language processing APIs, those are super important informational tools that you can pull information. It's you can get a free version. You can also get a paid version on that to pull from the API, but it's super helpful and enlightening in terms of how.
I love it. You're a bit of an overachiever. I asked for 1. You gave us 3.
Yeah.
My
I
next
talk about this
question
all
for
day,
you.
dude.
The most underrated page on a university website.
I would have to say that would be your faculty bio page. Faculty
That's
bio
becoming
page.
popular, yeah.
Yeah, it's important for your credentials. It's important to make sure that you're connecting back your faculty, their unique expertise and vision of their industries back with your brand.
A brand message being from everybody and not just from one company saying that it's great. It comes from everybody. I love that. All right. And what is one thing that happens in higher ed marketing that every other industry should try to copy?
I think for us, it's thought leadership. We are really good. I'm privileged to work with folks who build authority because they're getting published and they're publishing peer-reviewed papers.
Other industries.
Right? It's not something that's natural, but a lot of folks are saying, "Oh, you got to do digital PR, you got to do thought leadership now." Archer, we've been doing that for well plus a decade, and so it wasn't built for AI. It was originally built for search, but it's turned into this helpful tool in us being able to frame our brands and provide another really high authority proof point around who we are and the value we give.
I think that's a great answer, that everyone's trying to copy the authority that happens in the education industry so naturally through their different PR methods. I think that's perfect. Well, Ray, that's all I had for you today. I appreciate that you joined us for this episode of SEO On Air. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Awesome. Yeah, you guys can find me at Ray Martinez on X.com. You can find me Ray Martinez SEO on LinkedIn. And then you could also just reach out to me on my personal site, raymartinezseo.com or at archeredu.com. Thanks,
Perfect.
Koa, for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.